Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. I am Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona with producer Bobby helping us out for the Sunday race of the day as we head on over to Churchill Downs and we turn the calendar to June for the Grade 3 Old Forester Mint Julep going a mile and a 16th on the turf course. If you can, subscribe to the channel below and drop a selection in. Let us know who do you like in this wide open competitive field here, David, as we take a look at the odds. I thought you can make cases for many in here. I think moving on up, very solid with what this horse has been doing lately in really nice form. Charlenes Dream was a recent winner in a stakes race just a few weeks ago. Deep Satin and No Mo Candy to the outside. Both have been very, very talented with what we've seen from them early on. Pinup Betty is in nice form right now. And then you can make cases for a lot of these other horses who are bigger prices. I thought a really fair race, and I don't know if anyone's going to be too short of a price in here.
Yeah, I found this to be a really fun race to handicap. I mean, it definitely is a grade 3 affair in the sense that you wouldn't expect too many of these horses to try some of the grade 1 company in the races they'll run at Saratoga for the Belmont Stakes Festival next week. But you got a lot of horses in here that could be using this kind of race to springboard into some of those tougher races later in the season. Horses like No Mo Candy and Deep Satin drawn towards the outside, relatively lightly raced, who look like they could be on the way up. So I found this to be one where you really have to decide for yourself which horses are going to be moving in the right direction coming in here, because there's a lot of potential along this field.
Let's take a look at the Timeform US Pace Projector. Remember, you can purchase these with the Timeform US Past Performances, part of the All Access Past Performances too. Moving on up, they have forwardly placed along with Charlenes Dream, Deep Satin. I mean, I'm imagining all of them want that early position. Moving on up hasn't necessarily been as aggressive in the last couple. I think he's been fine. They've been fine sitting with her just off the pace a little bit. The horses to the outside, I could see them with that outside draw, maybe being forced to be a little more aggressive. Charlenes Dream, No Mo Candy, even a horse like Deep Satin trying to get some position from out there.
Yeah, I would be surprised if Moving On Up is on the lead here. They've been pretty intentional to take her just off the pace and get her a pocket trip in her last few starts, and she should have another perfect opportunity to do that here, breaking from yet another inside post. She's a horse that seems to draw inside just about every time she's led over there. So I think that she'll be in the pocket, but horses like Charlene's Dream, probably going to go forward. She's had a lot of success on the front end. No Mo Candy is another that I would imagine will be more forwardly placed than she's shown in the pace projector, especially if she's fresh coming off the layoff. So I would imagine those two in particular could be just ahead of Moving On Up.
Let's meet the field here for the Mint Julep at Churchill Downs. We start with Serene Saraf, David. And I remember handicapping the Distaff Turf Mile. There are 4 horses that are in this race that exit that race. And on paper, there was not very much early speed in that race. And it just seemed like Serene Saraf and the connections had a plan that they wanted to go. And they put this horse on the front end and she got clear early and she just stopped. She just didn't really like running on the front end. But you know what? That was a plan that they had in a race that looked like that was a good plan to try to get aggressive. I'm going to expect that in this race, they're going to have the tactics that worked much better for her in those 2 prior races where they grab a hold mid-pack or towards the back of the pack and make one late run. And if you're playing her off those races with that form, I think she just looks a lot better if you can be really forgiving and put a line through that last race.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who liked her and bet her last time, I wasn't upset to see her on the front end controlling the pace. But as you said, it just didn't really work out. When you try to change up a horse's running style like that, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And typically you'll see connections go back to styles that worked in the past. And she was a horse that likes to rally from just off the pace. Now, she still looks a little slower than some others in here, Gino, but I'm going to make some excuses for her recent races. First off, the Distaff Turf Mile, beyond going to the front end, I felt like watching a lot of those turf races on Derby Day that you didn't want to be right down on the rail, especially on the stretch. We saw horses fanning all across the course and horses coming down the center of the track to be successful in a lot of those turf races. And she was the one in that Distaff Turf Mile that was just glued to the inside every step of the way. So I can give her that excuse. And then her US debut when she was on the turf at Gulfstream Park, she was legitimately 4 wide around both turns of that race, which is almost an impossible winning trip to work out at Gulfstream Park. And she still was able to get the job done, albeit against an inferior field to this one. I just feel like she's better than she looks on paper, and I'm hoping that the trip works out more to her favor here.
Moving on up is a stakes winner, grade 2 place. Most recently, she was in the Distaff Turf Mile. She was inside. She was third, a couple lengths off. She got shuffled a bit and then she had to lose some positioning. She had to get off the rail, angle around, kind of in between. It wasn't the smoothest trip. She did outfinish a horse in that race for fourth, which I liked when she got a little bit game there. She's just been in pretty solid form. And when you go through her races overall, she doesn't really have a lot of bad performances, especially on the turf. She's 5 of 11. What do you think about moving on up's chances in here?
Yeah, I agree with all of your observations about the Distaff Turf Mile. That's kind of one of the key races you have to watch a few times when you're handicapping this Mint Julep, because I think there are 4 horses coming out of that Distaff Turf Mile that are running here. And yeah, I agree. Got a little shuffled back, got outside in the stretch. So she did get off that rail for at least the final quarter mile of the race. I still thought she had a look at it in the late stages, Gino, and couldn't quite quicken the way that we saw from her at Gulfstream Park. And I did think she got absolutely perfect trips, saving ground both 2 and 3 back in those victories. But she still ran really well to win that Sand Springs 2 back. I was a little surprised to see Frankie Dettori named on her in this race. Not a jockey that Saffie Joseph uses that much, and some other jockeys that he does use more often on other horses in here. So that was just surprising me a little bit. But if she gets the right kind of trip that works for her, she's obviously dangerous in here.
Venetia doesn't have a ton of early speed, so sometimes she could need a little bit of pace help. She was also in that Distaff Turf Mile. The 1, 2, and 3 were all in that race. She was back to last of 8 in that field, about 5 lengths off. She did make up some late ground, though, in between horses when she finally got some room to run. What do you think about her chances in here?
She's just a horse that's so pace dependent. She doesn't break that well all that often, so she finds herself at the back of the pack just about every time. She really needs things to come apart to have success, as they did for her in the Forever Together when she won at Aqueduct last year. But since then, she's just kind of been picking up minor awards, and I feel like that's her best hope again here.
Duvet Day is next up. She won the Cardinal back in November. David, I think you and I previewed that race. And she, on the morning line, she was like 7-2, one of the short prices. And then she was ice cold on the betting board. She ends up going off at 10-1. I didn't really love her in that spot because she hadn't been winning races as of late, but she won that one pretty impressively. So all of us in the betting public were wrong that day, no doubt about it. But since that race, she's been off. We haven't seen her since November. So coming off of that really good effort, which was one of her better efforts in a while, she's now been off for 6 months. Michael McCarthy can definitely get a horse ready to fire, but I feel like in a competitive race, I would probably want to see her with some more recent form. What do you think about her chances in here?
Yeah, I was laughing to myself, Gino, because I was going to say the same thing, and I was wondering if you'd remember that. I think she was 3-1 on the morning line.
Yeah,
and she went all the way up to 10-1, and I think we both were saying, don't really get why she's that short on the line. Well,
you're right about that part.
Yes, well, she probably would have been interesting at paying $22 in the race, but I think the key point from that Cardinal was that sometimes that Churchill turf course late in the season can get a little tough for horses to handle, and you saw some runners getting tired at the end of that race, and she was able to use her ample stamina to run by them all at the end, because she is a horse that's been successful going much longer marathon distances in the past. Now cutting back to the mile in the 16th, coming off the layoff. I wonder if this race is going to be a little too sharply run for her. So I was not going to take her again coming off that break.
Drastia has now won 3 of the last 4. She came off the break from November to May, and she won an allowance race, a non-winners of 2 optional 80 in May. She's now going to make the first start of second start as a 4-year-old after the first start was a career best. Horses like this are always interesting to me, David, because last year she was a little behind Pinup Betty and Duvet Day, but as a 3-year-old, with the time off, she certainly could have stepped forward and improved now as a 4-year-old and be better. Do you think she's a horse who fits with this group?
Yeah, and I think when we were handicapping that Cardinal last year, I remember saying about this horse, I'm not picking her in this race, but she feels like the kind of horse that's just getting good coming into this race. And maybe this race is too tough right now, but she might be the kind of horse that down the line when she turns 4 could compete at this level. Well, now she's back in another grade 3 event, but feels like this race came up way tougher than the Cardinal did. So this still feels like maybe it's just a notch above where she is at from a class standpoint. But she ran well, ran the best race of her career off the layoff last time, and she's going out for low profile connection. So she's always going to be a price in these races. I couldn't quite get there with her in this race, but I'm keeping my eye on her once again.
Yeah, completely agree. Neon Icon will try turf for the first time. She is a half to a winning turf sibling. I think 2 of her direct siblings tried it. One of them won on it. David, I don't generally love though when horses try the grass just off of the really poor performances on the dirt, when it kind of just feels like they're trying something different and they're taking a shot. She was in the Royal Delta, just didn't fire at all that day. She completely missed the break. So I'm willing to excuse that one. Then she came back at Keeneland in the double dog dare and again just didn't really fire at all. So you have back-to-back races where she just hasn't done a whole lot, and now they try the turf off of that. Can you build a case for her?
I mean, as you said, she's got a little turf pedigree on the bottom side. I generally don't love the progeny of Arrogate getting on the turf, especially if they weren't originally meant for the turf. And I know she's got one off the turf win from early in her career. I didn't look it up, admittedly, but she drew the outside post. I'm thinking she was an MTO in that spot. So, I mean, I doubt she was ever really meant for the grass. And it feels like they're just kind of trying it now out of desperation.
Gavia will stretch back out to a mile and a 16th after a couple sprint races, including a stakes win at Fairgrounds, going 5.5 on the turf. A couple starts back in March. She could be closer here early on. As you see, when she stretches out, she shows a little bit more positional speed. So I think she can be more involved in the race. Just not the easiest group in the world, but she's a horse who I played sometimes, David, and like one of her better performances, a race like the Lake George, would actually stack up pretty well in here. She wasn't far behind Pinup Betty in the Regret last year at Churchill Downs. Do you think she fits with this group?
Yeah, I think I actually liked her as well in that Lake George when she was 15-1 and she led into the stretch. But I think the distance of a mile that day kind of found her out at the end as she couldn't quite see it out. And now she's got to go a mile and a 16th against a field of, I would say, similar quality, if not a little tougher than what she met in the Lake George last year. I just feel like this might be a little bit too much of a test of her stamina, Gino. And she also doesn't really seem like she's improved much since then.
Yeah, and I mean, just to the outside of her, all these horses we're going to start to talk about next, I think are major players in here. Pinup Betty is a grade 3 winner. She just missed in the Distaff Turf Mile. She had a good start. She was sitting really close in the race. She was about 4-3 lengths off. She was in the 2 path. She got a really clear trip there versus a horse like Moving On Up, who maybe had to kind of move around a little bit. But Pinup Betty, I think, is very solid with this group. That was her first start as a 4-year-old. Now she goes second start back after 6 months off. Both of her wins are at Churchill, so we know she likes this turf course, David. She wouldn't really be a big shock to me in here.
Not at all. And she did kind of get the right kind of trip in that Distaff Turf Mile, as you were alluding to. She was never on the inside. It's a race where the horse that won the race simply in front was kind of out in the 3-4 path every step of the way. Usually that's a bad trip on the turf, but it seemed like it worked out that day at Churchill. So Pinup Betty never being on the inside, I think it worked out okay for her. And she did battle that winner all the way to the wire. And, you know, I don't love all of her races, Gino, but I will say some of the best races that she's ever run have been over this Churchill Downs turf course. And her one poor performance over this course in the Mrs. Revere, she got badly steadied in the upper stretch of that race and actually was trying again at the end. So she is pretty consistent, feels like she's on a course that she likes, and she's never that short a price. So she's a horse that I definitely wanted to leave open in here.
Yeah, lots of little positives for her as we move to Charlene's Dream, who just won the Gallarette last time, and that was just 2 weeks ago at Pimlico. She'll now go second start back after an 8-month break. Generally, you don't see horses off the long layoff run and then come back real quickly, but this was a pretty easy victory for her, David, especially with the way the turf course was playing that day. I think you were kind of talking about it. You wanted to be on the front end, and she got the lead, and she just was able to cruise and set some really slow fractions. But I will kind of counter that and say she can go much quicker. I mean, earlier on in her career, you can see she has races where she's going like 45-2, going 6 furlongs. So she can legit sprint and have that type of speed. She stretched it out last time out. It's just, you don't love playing horses off of trips that are easy like that, right? Because she's going to be a shorter price in here, and she's probably not going to get as easy of a lead and get to, go out front and cruise like she did last time.
Yeah, I just don't really know what to make of that last race. I mean, not only did it seem like having speed was an advantage, but also that turf course at Pimlico was, close to bottomless. I mean, it was really soft, and there were some horses that were clearly just not handling it at all, and she did. So I don't know what to really make of the fact that she beat that field as resoundingly as she did. And yeah, she showed some talent last year, but she was a big price when she won that stakes at Horseshoe Indy. She was a big price last time in the Gallarette. Probably would have been bigger if it didn't look like that turf course was producing such long shot results early in the day. She looked like she was going to be 15-1, and then I think some 50-1 shots won early on Preakness Day.
And I think one or two of the speed horses scratched also, which kind of upgraded her in that race too and made it a little easier on paper for her.
Yeah, so I just feel like the value's kind of gone with her now, even if she is around the same price that she was last time. This is a tougher field.
Two outside horses have not done a whole lot wrong in their careers. No Mo Candy is a grade 3 winner, just a neck defeat in the debut, and then 3 consecutive wins since. The only concern would be that those races were all last year. The last time we saw this horse was in November 8th of 2024, but we know that Safi Joseph Jr. can certainly get a horse ready to fire off the bench. I thought this was a good performance, and what was kind of key to this one, David, is that showed she could sit off a little bit with a target, not necessarily just a need the lead horse, got to be right on the front end, sat off the pace, moved to the front end here, and was able to hold off another horse who was closing. So she showed a little bit more professionalism and maturity, kind of like she was growing up in that most recent race.
Yeah, this horse seems like she might have been a bit of a surprise for the connections last year, because I know she took money down in Florida, but I mean, she was pretty dead on the board in both of those races when she got to Aqueduct, going off at 10-1 and 18-1 for a Safi Joseph horse. She won both of them, has improved with each start since getting on the turf. And when I was initially evaluating her, Gino, I was like, oh, maybe it's kind of a negative that she went to the sidelines after running a career best race. But then I was thinking more, even those Safi races at Gulfstream through the winter, the way that this filly won the Pebbles, beating a pretty good field at Aqueduct at the end of last year, I wonder if they thought to themselves, maybe this could be the kind of horse that could be competitive in Grade 1 races next year. So perhaps it would be wise to give her the winter off and try to target some bigger races rather than continue to race her through the winter. Well, now she's coming back off the layoff. I did catch a video of her last workout over the main track at Saratoga, and it was a solo drill. She worked better than you'd expect the turf horse to work on the dirt. So she looks like one that's primed for a good effort coming back off the layoff. And we'll see what kind of price she is with IRAD getting aboard. But in such a competitive race, she's a horse that I thought was very interesting.
Rounding out the field is Deep Satin, another horse who just hasn't done very much wrong in her 5 races. She's won 2 of them. She has 3 runner-up efforts. Most recently, she was defeated by a neck, and this was at Keeneland, and it was in her first start back after a 7.5-month layoff. I thought she ran really well, David. She was inside. She was 4th. We can show you the replay here. She was 2 lengths off. She was in between horses, but then as things open up, she, in the early stretch, she starts to run really well, and she just couldn't get to Sweet Rebecca, who got that advantage and separated there. But she's the Virginia Oaks winner from 2024, and I think she's one of the more versatile horses in here, just showing a little more tactical speed in her last couple starts. We know she can come from way out of it if she has to. I'm just worried about the outside draw in a competitive race, a horse who could get hooked really wide if they don't get decisive early and make a decision. Do you want to sit close, or do you want to kind of grab a hold and come way back out of it?
Yeah, Gino, I agree with all of that. I'm a little worried about the post position for the kind of trip that she needs, because she feels like one of those horses that's going to find herself in mid-pack. And if you're going for that position in mid-pack, you could get hung out wide around both turns. So I think that's the difficulty that Jose Ortiz is going to have to overcome. But her form is good. I mean, it's not like that last race came out of nowhere, and I'd be inclined to be a little skeptical of it, because it was a turf course that was pretty soft. That was the final day of the Keeneland meet, where it just rained throughout the day and the turf kept getting wetter and wetter. But the winner of that race, Sweet Rebecca, is really good. There were some European shippers in there that finished behind her that feel like it made it a better than your average allowance race. So I think she's got real talent. I'm just a little worried about the trip.
A very competitive Mint Julep for the Sunday race of the day at Churchill Downs. Let's move to selections now, David. In a lot of ways you can go in this race. Who are you going to put on top?
Yeah, I was kind of between 2 horses in here. I do think No Mo Candy is pretty interesting coming back off the layoff. I'm expecting her to run well. Just worried that she's not going to be a big price in this race with Irad Ortiz aboard. Not that she really is supposed to be based on her form. I just want to go back to Serene Saraf for one more race, Gino, because she was a price last time. She's back in a similar spot here. I can make excuses for the races that she's run on the turf in this country, and I feel like there's a better performance in here. We'll see if she can produce it in a race here where I feel like she's going to get somewhat lost on the board.
The 2 horses who I feel the best about, David, just getting the trips are the 2 moving on up and the 11 Deep Satin. I'm going to wait how I bet this race based on their prices. If one of the 2 of them is just much higher than the other, then that's going to be the horse that I play, because I think they're both close in that 3.5 to 1-ish range. So I'll look at both of them and see, can I find value with one of the other 2? And that's probably the one that I'll land on there. But whoever you play, however you play them, we wish you the best of luck in the Sunday race of the day.